Welcome back to Factually Strange, where we dive into the most bizarre, chilling, and hard to believe true crime cases from around the world. Today, we're covering a case that has haunted a small Georgia town for nearly 2 decades: the murder of Doris Worrell and the long, twisted road that finally led to justice. Doris Worrell's life in Douglas, Georgia appeared ordinary on the surface: a quiet woman devoted to her family and community. But beneath that calm exterior lay a story that would shock a town and haunt investigators for nearly 2 decades. The Worrell family was well known in the community, thanks in part to Jon's Sports Park, a local recreational facility where the family worked and socialized. Doris was seen as the heart of the household, devoted to her children and invested in the community. Yet, behind the doors of their seemingly normal life, secrets began to unravel. The tragic events that followed would leave a lasting mark on Douglas, bringing long buried truths to light and challenging the image of the family that many thought they knew. Doris Annette Worrell was born on September 18, 1967, in Fort Valley, Georgia. She was the daughter of Elizabeth Holt Spillers and the late Wilbur Johnson Spillers. Although originally a native of Fort Valley, Doris was raised in Douglas, Georgia, where she spent her childhood surrounded by her family of two parents and one sister, Leanne, as well as a close-knit community. From a young age, she was known for her kind-hearted and caring nature, traits that would come to define much of her life. Growing up in Douglas, Doris attended local schools and was described by those who knew her as a bright and thoughtful student. She was involved in school activities and was even a cheerleader at the Westville School in Perry, Georgia. Her sister said that Doris was artistic and bubbly. She could draw just about anything by looking at it. It was also evident that Doris developed a strong sense of responsibility and nurturing spirit early on, qualities that later influenced many of her personal and professional choices. Doris pursued higher education at University of Georgia, where she graduated before returning to her hometown. She embarked on a career as an elementary school teacher, dedicating herself to educating young minds at Eastside School in Douglas. Alongside her formal teaching role, Doris volunteered as an art teacher at the Hope Center, where she shared her creativity and passion with children who benefited from community programs. In addition to her work in education, Doris had a passion for interior design. It was her dream to become an interior designer. But since that did not pan out, she applied her creative skills to beautify homes and public spaces within Douglas, further endearing her to friends and neighbors alike. Her combination of patience, creativity, and empathy made her both an effective teacher and beloved community member. Doris would also embrace the roles of wife and mother after marrying Jon Worrell. Jon Worrell was born in 1967 and is a native of Douglas, Georgia. He attended the University of Georgia, where he earned a Bachelor of Business Administration degree. Before his collegiate studies, he completed an associate's degree in psychology at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College. After completing his education, he pursued a career in professional golf. In 1986, he achieved recognition in the golfing community by winning the prestigious Western Junior Championship, a notable amateur tournament. This victory highlighted his potential in the sport. He continued to compete professionally for approximately 7 years. After retiring from professional golf, Worrell transitioned into the business world. Beyond his business endeavors, Worrell has also been involved in various activities, including fishing and sports, and has expressed a strong commitment to his faith and family. Doris and Jon Worrell met in Douglas, Georgia. Their relationship began when they met while living at the same apartment complex. At the time they met, Doris was attending school at University of Georgia and Jon was playing as a professional golfer. During a winter storm, Doris's classes were canceled for the day. All of the college kids, including Doris, were outside their apartments enjoying the snow. Jon happened to live right across from Doris at this apartment complex, and that day, they hit it off. They quickly built a life together based on shared values and a strong commitment to family. Jon, known locally for his involvement in business and community activities, complemented Doris's nurturing entrepreneurial spirit. Doris and Jon got married right out of college and moved in together in Douglas, Georgia. After the couple got married, they had 3 children together, 1 son and 2 daughters. At some point after the expansion of their family, Doris made the personal decision to step away from her professional career and focus on raising her family. The role of mother became central to Doris's identity, and those close to her often described her as a deeply devoted to providing a loving and stable home environment for her children. It was also around this time that the couple decided they did not want Jon on the road as much. His golfing career required a lot of travel, so he retired, and together Jon and Doris co-founded Jon's Sports Park, a family-oriented recreational facility featuring attractions such as go-kart track, arcade, and miniature golf course. Doris balanced motherhood with her role in managing Jon's sports park. The park became a central part of their lives, a place where the family worked closely together. Doris was often the welcoming face of the business, involved in the day-to-day operations and known for her friendly and approachable demeanor. Their life appeared stable and typical of the hard-working family in small-town Georgia. Friends and neighbors described the Worrells as dedicated parents who prioritized their children's upbringing and well-being. Doris and Jon's partnership was seen as supportive, with Jon handling many aspects of the business while Doris managed the home and cared for the children. Despite the picture-perfect life they appeared to lead, the Worrells' family story was about to change in an unexpected way. It all began when they met a young girl in need, Paola Yarberry, who would soon become a part of their world. Throughout her life, Doris was an active member of the First Baptist Church of Douglas, where her faith and volunteer work were well recognized. And one Sunday during church services, the Worrells met a young girl in need, a shy 15-year-old girl named Paola Yarberry, an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela. She had been abandoned by her guardian aunt and found herself homeless, with nowhere to turn but the church's doorstep. Doris, who was well known for her compassion and generosity, couldn't stand by and do nothing. Leanne Tuggle, her sister, said that Doris had a heart of gold. She told Paola, "Come stay with us, and you can come sleep on our sofa." But what started as a temporary arrangement quickly evolved. Within a few days, Paola went from sleeping on the couch to fully living with the Worrell family. She integrated seamlessly into their household, helping care for the younger children and working alongside Jon at Jon's sports park. A friend recalled, "At the time, I thought Paola was a sweet and wonderful person. She was always at church, always smiling, just had a great personality." But in hindsight, after the investigation into Doris's murder unfolded, that perception changed. The same friend said, "My opinion of a lot of people in the case has changed. So yes, my opinion of Paola has changed too." Paola Yarberry had become more than just a household guest in the Worrell household. Over the course of 4 years, she was treated like family. And by 2006, Paola was 19 years old and deeply embedded into the daily life of the Worrell family. What began as a temporary gesture of kindness had evolved into a long-term arrangement, with Paola living under the roof and playing an active role in their business. But that seemingly stable family dynamic would shatter in a single morning. On September 20th, 2006, what started as a routine day at the sports park quickly spiraled into a crime scene, and nothing in Douglas, Georgia would ever be the same again. September 20th, 2006. Jon's sports park was closed to the public that day. Normally, it was filled with the laughter of children and the sound of arcade games and go-karts. But today, it was quiet. Jon Worrell and the family's live-in nanny, Paola, had scheduled a deep cleaning of the facility. That in and of itself was not unusual. But what was strange was that Doris Worrell was coming along to help. Doris was not typically involved in the hands-on maintenance of the park, but according to her sister Leanne, this time was different. Paola had suggested that Doris come along to clean the indoor play area, particularly the kiddie tunnels, and Doris agreed. Around 9:30 a.m., Jon, Doris, and Paola arrived at the shuttered park. Just 10 minutes later, at 9:40, Jon left, saying he was heading to a hardware store to pick up supplies. That left Doris and Paola alone inside. At approximately 11:15 a.m., Jon returned to the sports park and dialed 911. He told the dispatcher that his wife had been shot. First responders arrived to a horrifying scene. Blood spattered across the floor, glass broken, and Doris lying in a pool of blood with a single gunshot wound to the head. It was a close-range execution, and her husband identified the body. There was no weapon left behind, no visible signs of forced entry. The killer was gone. But Paola was still inside. She hadn't called 911. In fact, she hadn't come forward at all. Officers eventually found her hiding deep in the maze-like tunnels of the play area. She was terrified and initially refused to come out, but eventually officers coaxed her to safety, and that's when she began to talk. Paola said that not after Jon had left, someone knocked on the door. Doris went to answer it. What followed, Paola claimed, was a flurry of chaos. Shouting, banging, shattering glass, and then a single shot. She never saw the shooter, just a sound, and then silence. Police now had a crime scene, a shaken witness, and a grieving husband, but no murder weapon, and no clear motive for who would want Doris Worrell, a beloved wife and mother of 3, dead. The investigation. In the immediate aftermath of Doris's tragic death on September 20th, 2006, investigators considered several potential leads. Given that the incident occurred at Jon's sports park, Authorities initially theorized that the shooting might have been a botched armed robbery or possibly linked to gang-related violence. Another avenue explored was the possibility of retaliation by an individual who had been banned from the park not long before the murder. In the months that followed, the case grew cold. With little physical evidence and no eyewitnesses who could clearly identify a suspect, leads were scarce. Investigators continued pursuing every possible angle, but it wasn't until a confidential tip surfaced during a renewed push for leads that the case took a dramatic turn. In 2008, two former employees of the sports park, Glidden Rodriguez and Brandon Eugene Cage, were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Authorities believe that they may have been involved in orchestrating or carrying out the killing. However, due to insufficient evidence connecting either man directly to the crime, the charges were ultimately dropped. Rodriguez has since passed away, and Cage was later released from prison on unrelated charges. As the investigation slowly progressed over the years, the initial perception of Jon Worrell as a grieving husband began to shift. Jon was said to be very cooperative at the beginning of the investigation, but as authorities kept digging, he requested an attorney. Jon told Leanne that it was because he thought that the GBI were crooked, and he was afraid that they were going to take his kids away. But it most likely had to do with what authorities were bringing to the surface. So authorities uncovered that Jon was leading a double life. He was engaging in extramarital affairs with younger women. Doris's sister Leanne stated that Doris knew about the affairs before her death. She said Doris's reaction to the affairs was that she was stunned. It was also discovered that Jon allegedly had an inappropriate affair with the live-in nanny, Paola, throughout the years. Just to let you know, she was 15 when she moved in with the Worrells. At the time of the killing, she was 19. It was even advised by a close friend of the family that they not let Paola move in with them, stating it would cause problems within the marriage. Paola and Jon began spending a lot of time together while she lived in the Worrells' home, spending hours at Jon's sports park together. Doris' sister Leanne said that she and others at one point began to notice the way Paola and Jon looked at each other. Apparently, even Doris noticed the changes in the two. It was at this point that Doris knew she had enough. Her friends suggested moving out and back in with her parents, but Doris refused, saying if she left, it was almost like they won. Doris even chillingly said to the family, "You don't know what they'll do to me." Which leads up to the day where Paola conveniently asked Doris to help her clean at Jon's sports park on September 20th. In the days that followed, Paola allegedly began acting anxious and emotional, but that could have been chalked up to nerves. After all, she had been there that day. But as more information surfaced, police began to reconsider her role. Whispers of an affair between Jon and Paola gained traction. Jon, once a cooperative, grieving husband, was now growing evasive. That's when investigators got a break, not in the form of forensic evidence, but through immigration. Paola reportedly entered the U.S. from Venezuela as a child, and her immigration paperwork had never been properly completed. By 2008, she was 19 years old and living in the U.S. without legal status. That's when federal agents suddenly picked her up, not quietly, but in the middle of lunch at a nice restaurant in town. It was a very public scene. They walked in, cuffed her at the table, and hauled her away in a van. It looked like a routine immigration arrest on the surface, but something didn't sit right. Reporter Robert Preston put it bluntly, "Things like that don't happen in a vacuum. You don't make a public scene over an expired visa unless there's something more going on." And there was. Behind the scenes, investigators were using the arrest to pressure Paola. They suspected she knew more about Doris's murder than she had ever let on. While in custody, Paola finally cracked. She told agents that she did, in fact, know more about the events of the day. But when pressed for details, she suddenly clammed up. The arrest had opened a floodgate. Jon Worrell and his family tried to secure Paola's release on bond, but the Coffee County District Attorney stepped in to block it. In a letter to immigration authorities, the DA revealed something shocking. Not only was Paola believed to be withholding critical information about the murder, but Jon Worrell himself was now considered the main suspect in his wife's killing. It was the first time that Jon's name had been officially linked to the crime in public records. But without a smoking gun, no murder weapon, no confession, authorities still didn't have enough to bring charges. Paola's defense argued that holding her without clear evidence was unjust. So ultimately, she was deported. But instead of returning to Venezuela, Paola settled in Costa Rica. And eventually, so did Jon. After the murder of his wife, Jon reportedly told people that half the town looked at him with pity, and the other half looked at him like a murderer. He also claimed that his kids couldn't live normal lives under the shadow of constant gossip. So, Jon packed up the children and moved to Florida, where his family owned property. But this wasn't a fresh start, it was just a pause. Because not long after settling in, Jon made a sudden and drastic move that stunned everyone. He took the family dog to the vet and had it euthanized. Then, in the middle of the school day, Jon showed up and went through all three of his children without warning and vanished. And guess where he fled? He had fled to Costa Rica. I think GBI Special Agent in Charge Jason Seacrest said it best when he said, after Doris's murder, when Jon lost sympathy and the investigation began to highlight him, he did what murderers do. He ran. According to the website Jon created during this time, he began operating an ice company in Costa Rica. The site describes Jon as a God-fearing and family-loving man. He even claimed that moving to Central America was by far the best decision of our lives. In 2016, a now-removed article from the local Costa Rican newspaper described the Worrells as a family originally from Jacksonville, Florida. The story said that they had researched vacation spots online and had fallen in love with Costa Rica. One of Jon and Doris's children, 10 years old when Doris was murdered and 18 at the time of the interview, was quoted saying that the family fell in love at first sight and returned to the U.S. only long enough to talk to their grandparents, pack up, and move permanently within 3 months. The reporter described Jon as a former professional golfer who had exchanged a wandering life for owning an ice company in what they called the White City. But the most telling detail came when the article described the children's parents as Jon and Paola. The article, word for word, said, and I quote, accompanied by their parents, Jon and Paola, end quote. That's right, Jon and Paola were now openly living together as a couple, raising the children that Doris had to leave behind. Reporters eventually traveled to Costa Rica, trying to catch a glimpse of this new life that Jon and Paola had built together. And this is the footage that they got. So in the footage, it looks like Paola and Jon did spot the reporters, and they were not very happy about it. They started walking towards the reporters, confronting them. Paola even at one point starts to run and asks them, what are you doing here? I'll call the police. I'm calling the police. Basically, they were not happy about this at all, but they were able to catch them on camera. Paola and Jon were indeed together in Costa Rica. Let's just take a moment to absorb how truly outrageous this is. Jon Worrell and Paola didn't just flee the country. They started over in Costa Rica like nothing had ever happened. And then they rewrote the entire story. According to that local article, they claimed to be from Jacksonville, Florida. They talked about falling in love with Costa Rica on vacation. They referred to Doris's children, children who lost their mother in a brutal, still unsolved, quote, as theirs, as Paula's. There was no mention of Doris, no mention of the murder, no explanation for why Jon left Georgia under a cloud of suspicion, just a shiny, sugar-coated fantasy. And Jon, on his website, he proudly called himself a God-fearing and family-loving man. Honestly, he should be scared of God. He should be terrified, because no matter how far you run, the truth does not stay buried forever. This was not a fresh start. It was a cover-up, a reset button that they didn't earn. While Doris's family was still grieving, still demanding justice, Jon and Paola were playing house in paradise. Doris's case remained unsolved for nearly 2 decades, or as one reporter once put it, not unsolved, but unprosecuted. But now there's been a massive development, one that many would say was inevitable. Jon Worrell has finally been arrested. On May 20th, 2025, authorities released a bombshell news update confirming Jon's arrest for the murder of his wife. It said, the GBI has arrested and charged Jon Worrell, age 58, of Douglas, Georgia, with malice murder, felony murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and aggravated battery related to the death of his wife, Doris Worrell, almost 20 years ago. Jon, a current resident of Maryville, Missouri, was taken into custody without incident. The GBI and the Coffee County Sheriff's Office were assisted by the Missouri State Highway Patrol, Buchanan County Sheriff's Office, Nottoway County Sheriff's Office, and the Maryville Department of Public Safety. Jon is currently waiting for an extradition hearing to determine the timing of his return to Coffee County, Georgia. A follow-up statement came just a few days later, on May 23rd, providing more details about the case and his capture. Jon is currently booked at the Coffee County Jail after waived extradition in Missouri. Investigators learned that Jon and Doris were having marital issues, which included Jon's relationship with their live-in nanny, Paola. Jon was also concerned that a divorce from Doris would result in him losing his children. Jon then began looking for someone to kill Doris. In recent years, investigators learned that Jon and Paola had ended their romantic relationship and that Jon had moved back to the U.S. After another in-depth review of the case, it was decided that investigators would travel to Costa Rica, where Paola eventually cooperated. Based on the facts gathered in the early years of the investigation, additional information either learned, confirmed, or corroborated in the recent years, along with Paula's cooperation, investigators were able to obtain arrest warrants for Jon for Doris's death. It seems at some point in the years leading up to this arrest, Jon and Paula quietly ended their relationship. He had returned to the U.S. and was living in Missouri, while Paula remained in Costa Rica. After discovering this, investigators traveled overseas to speak with Paula again, and this time she agreed to cooperate. After years of silence, Paula finally appears to be ready to tell the full story of what she knows about the murder of Doris Worrell. As of now, Paula is not considered a suspect. Currently, the GBI and the Coffee County Sheriff's Office are finalizing the case to present to the Waycross Judicial Circuit District Attorney's Office for prosecution. The district attorney has expressed commitment to pursuing justice in accordance with Georgia law. After nearly 2 decades, justice for Doris Worrell is no longer just a hope. It's finally in motion. While it took far too long, and while the truth seemed obvious for many years, the dedication of investigators never wavered. Their persistence has led us to this moment, where the man believed to be responsible for Doris's death is finally behind bars. Doris was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Her life was stolen in an act of betrayal, but her story is never forgotten. And now, the wheels of justice are turning. To the detectives and agencies who never gave up, thank you. Your work has brought long-awaited peace to Doris's loved ones and ensured her name won't be lost in silence. Jon Worrell is in custody. The truth is finally catching up to you, Jon. And may Doris and her family finally find the peace that they deserve. This case leaves behind so many tangled emotions, and one of them is about Paula. While I do think it was incredibly selfish of her to hold the truth for as long as she did, it is very important to remember the context. Paula was just 15 years old when she moved into the Worrell household, after being left at the doorsteps of the church with no family to care for her. She was likely scared, isolated, and deeply grateful to the Worrell family for taking her in. But Jon, in my opinion, didn't see a lost child. He saw an opportunity. A vulnerable girl who just needed stability and family, and he took advantage of that. That is disgusting. No child should be preyed upon by someone they're supposed to trust. Paula was looking for refuge. Jon was allegedly looking for something else entirely. And as much as I try to understand her fear, I cannot excuse how long she stayed silent, though. She's now nearly 40. That is a long time to keep a secret that big. But we do need to remember that Paula is also a victim. Still, the real monster here is Jon. Worried about losing your children? Well, now you won't see them except on scheduled prison visits. And to pretend you cared about your kids while ripping away their mother, that is beyond hypocritical, and frankly, it's plain evil. I'll continue to follow this case and share any important updates as they come. So if you want to stay in the loop on stories like this, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to Factually Strange and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. Thank you.